Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot, and welcome to the next part of our Boeing 737 MAX tutorial series. Today we are going to have a look at the weight and balance, our load sheet, and the takeoff performance calculations. So we have reached a point in the tutorial where we would have been done with our pre-flight, we would have conducted the takeoff briefing, and as part of the takeoff briefing we do the route check, after which we are going to press the execute button on the FMC. So now we are waiting for the load sheet to be delivered to our aircraft, and eventually the ramp agent is going to come into a cockpit with a document that has the number of passengers and the amount of cargo listed on it. Once we have that, we can go into the electronic flight bag and into the performance tab, and then the weight and balance menu. And over here we are now going to enter the amount of passengers and the amount of cargo that we are going to carry on today's flight. So we are planned with 150 passengers on board today. And this already sets our zero fuel weight to 128.7. Now, the planned zero fuel weight for our flight today was 131.1, so I'm going to go into the cargo tab now, and I will simply fill this up to get to the target weight. So let's say we have 2,000 pounds in the front hold, and then maybe another 600 in the aft hold. And this gives us our zero fuel weight. From here we move on to the fuel page, and over here we are going to enter the amount of fuel that we need for the flight, which we can then also automatically uplink into the aircraft itself. So let's go ahead and have a quick look into our flight plan once again in order to determine the figures needed. So for the fuel itself, the minimum is 9,429 pounds, and we are going to take a little bit more in order to accommodate for our tutorial, and that we are going to take a bit longer on the ground due to all the explanations. Therefore, let's upload a total of 11,000 pounds of fuel. So let's type 11,000 into here in the total fuel field, and that is automatically going to do the correct distribution of the fuel in the tanks. Next up, we need the taxi out fuel and the planned trip fuel, which we can find in the flight plan. So our trip fuel is located just over here, so 5,579. And actually I'm entering it in the wrong field, my mistake. Let's put it down here, 5,579. And then we have the taxi fuel, which is located right down here, 315. So let's put that into the taxi fuel field. Alright, and after all of this has been entered, we get our predicted weights, and we get our center of gravity operating envelope. The next thing we're going to do is to click the Set MSFS Payload and Set MSFS Fuel buttons. This way, the aircraft has now been loaded and fueled. As you can quickly check down here on our fuel gauges, you can see we've now got 11,000 pounds of fuel on board. So now that our load sheet has been calculated, let's go ahead and enter the required information in our FMC. We are going to start on the performance page. So let's press init reference, index, and then onto performance. And now we compare the zero fuel weight we have in here, 131.1, with the zero fuel weight from our load sheet, which is 131.3. So let's go ahead and enter that, 131.3. 200 pounds heavier, that's not going to make much of a difference. Before we press execute, we check the gross weight, which is 142.1, and we compare that with our load sheet, 142.3. That's close enough. We can go ahead and execute this. Alright, now that our aircraft knows its fuel weights, let's go ahead and start calculating our takeoff performance. We're going to press the complete button up here, and that way the takeoff weight and CG have automatically been adopted into the electronic flight bag. Now let's go ahead and copy the FMC data so that it automatically imports the airport, runway that is selected on the departure page, and the rest of the data we have to enter manually. So today let's go ahead and have a look at our latest weather through the Navigraph chart app. which is really useful for that. So let's go down here in Las Vegas and weather. And this way we can even get the real-world ATIS from... This way we can even get the real-world ATIS. So you can see the departure ATIS is Charlie and runway 26 right is in use down here. Okay, so Las Vegas info Charlie. The wind is calm. Temperature 29 degrees. Altimeter 3003. So wind calm. Temperature 29, and if it's in Celsius, we can add a C behind it so that the EFB accepts it in Celsius. And the QNH is now 30.03, so it has increased a little bit since our previous tutorial video. So that much about what we need for the weather. A small note over here. In the wind field, you are always going to enter the most conservative wind. So if you have variable winds reported, then you would see which one gives you either the least headwind or the most tailwind. And that is the one that you would enter in here. So now that this is done, let's go ahead and calculate our performance. We have a couple of selections to make on the right hand side over here. Let's start with the engine thrust rating. Normally, we will try to use the lowest possible fixed D-rate. So let's start with a Takeoff 2 D-rate down here. For the assumed temperature, we are going to use the maximum. Flaps config. Unfortunately, there is no optimum function simulated, but therefore the default flap setting that we should use is flaps 5 on the max 8. This is because flaps 5 provides the best compromise between tail clearance, so margin to tail strike, versus climb performance. Air conditioning is normally kept on, and the anti-ice, well, is certainly going to be off today. Let's go ahead and hit calculate, and we can see that this now gives us a takeoff setting. If the aircraft would tell you that it is unable to compute takeoff data using these values, the first thing to do would be to select a higher takeoff rating, so takeoff 1 or takeoff, and if that doesn't work and you already have full takeoff selected, then you can reduce the flaps from 5 to 1, or you can think about turning the air conditioning off in the calculations. However, today, none of this is necessary. As you can see, we have got a good result for our takeoff calculations down here. So we have a flaps 5 takeoff, a trim of 6.67 units, and we have a D-rated takeoff 2 at 46 degrees assumed temperature. So let's go over to the N1 limit page, select D-rated takeoff 2, and the assumed temperature of 46 degrees down here. So 46 going into here. So that's 76.5%, and we compare that with the percentage we see in here, which is 77.1. So you can see there is a slight difference there, but it's within acceptable margins over here. So then let's go ahead and move forward to the takeoff page, where we are going to enter the flap setting, which is config 5. The center of gravity, 20.8. And note that you can also simply press the button next to the CG and it will automatically populate it. But in the real world you can't do that, of course, so you have to enter it manually. Okay, 6.6 units of trim is calculated, so let's go ahead and set the trim to that value, which is roughly over here, 6.6. So, takeoff speeds 141, 141, 144. And if the speeds that are automatically calculated by the FMC are within 1 knot of those calculated by the electronic flight bag, you can simply accept the FMC calculated speeds. If they differ by more than 1 knot, establish the possible reason why. Most likely you either have an incorrect weight or an incorrect thrust setting or flap setting. Or, otherwise, always use the speeds from the electronic flight bag as master speeds. So, use the speeds of the EFB rather than the speeds that you have down here in the FMC. Last but not least, once the V2 is selected down here, we are also going to enter the V2 up here on the MCP, so 144 knots goes right into here. Last but not least, we got to move back to our performance application, and we have to go to the landing calculation. Once again, we can import the FMC data down here, and we've got San Francisco 28 right, and we got to run a landing dispatch calculation. And that is the default page that shows up here. Otherwise, using the show en route or show dispatch button, you can always get back to this. The reason we need to do this is we need to calculate if we are legal to land at the destination airport under the given circumstances. Now, personally, I'm a huge fan of doing a simple calculation here. So let's just select runway condition dry. We'll take a tailwind of 5 knots, so we enter -5 in here. Temperature, let's just make it 20, and the actually 20 Celsius, please. And the QNH, something like 29.92. So, landing flaps 40, air condition on, anti-ice off, and auto brakes something. Calculate, and you can see that we can land at the destination. Once this is figured out, we can go back to our takeoff calculation down here, and we'll keep this one open. Note that in the beta version that I'm using to record this, the Navigraph charts are currently not working. Otherwise, you would display the airport taxi chart at this moment. So this concludes our setup down here. The last thing for us to do is to hit the info page once again and verify that both N1 and speed reference are set to automatic. Then we can hide this page and we are good to go. So from here on, we would read the pre-flight checklists or the before start checklist down to the line, depending on what your company has, and then we are going to get ready for the pushback. That, however, is going to be a part for a dedicated video, so I would like to thank you very much for watching. Hope that you have learned something today. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below, like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.